we're going to be doing an RDL with dumbbells. So when I'm teaching an RDL with dumbbells, usually I like to start near a wall because that just gives you something to reference to hinge into. So by a hinge, all I mean is you're going to be folding at your hips. So for this hinge type motion, we're trying to use the wall to reference you to try to reach your butt back towards the wall so that you're able to get that hinge. So you're going to go on and grab onto your weights. So feet start about hip width apart, more or less depending on the person. So if you have a lot of restrictions in your hips, sometimes a little bit of a wider stance is a little bit easier for you. We're going to start off with our foot contacts, base of our big toe, base of our little toe, and our heels. We're going to go ahead and start with some soft knees. So make sure your knees are not locked. Your knees are going to be slightly bent, moving a little bit more towards your toes. So I am starting at about a foot length away from the wall. So if you're just starting off, your range of motion might not be that good. So starting off with a shorter range of motion might be helpful. So our weights are going to stay close to our body, and we have this little squeeze into our armpits. So foot contacts, soft knees, slightly shift our weight back, full breath in through our nose. Exhale, lower belly, middle belly, rib cage all get smaller. And that's just giving us that stacked position of our rib cage over our pelvis. And we're going to try to maintain that the entire time. So we want this abdominal engagement the entire time. So as we inhale, we're slowly going to lower the weights, sliding them down our legs as our hips shift backwards. And we're going to start off just to about knee level. So we're inhaling as we lower, exhale as we return to the top. Notice my knees are slightly bent more towards my toes. My hips are shifting backwards. I have this little squeeze downward. I'm looking about 7 feet ahead of me at the ground in front of me. Exhale as I come back. So as you start to get better and better at this exercise, you're able to hinge a little bit further. You're able to go a little bit lower into the motion. So what that means is you could step a little bit further away from the wall and start to go a little bit lower. Usually I say the max is about mid-shin level. So things to look out for when you're doing this exercise. First, I want to start off with your knee position. So make sure as you're coming to the top, you're not overextending at your knee to come to the top. That's going to cause a little bit more activity from your back as opposed to your hamstrings and glutes like we're trying to feel it. Next thing that I want to talk about is make sure as you're coming down, you're not excessively rounding like this. We want to make sure we're maintaining that stacked position of our rib cage over our pelvis as we're continuing to do this exercise, incorporating that breathing and core activation as we continue to do this exercise. Next thing I want you to look out for is this shoulder position. So as we're lowering, especially as we start to go higher and higher in weights, we're going to have this tendency to want to kind of crank our shoulders up towards our ears. Keep this squeeze into your armpits as you're lowering to keep that engagement of those lower shoulder blade muscles. And last but not least, you're looking about 7 feet ahead of you, give or take, at the ground in front of you. So make sure you're not excessively tucking your chin in as you're doing this, but also make sure you're not looking excessively up as you're doing this as well. This is predominantly a hamstring and glute exercise, so that's where you should be feeling it. So maintaining that foot position, that knee position, loading into your hips, shifting into your hips while maintaining that stacked position will help you feel it in your hamstrings and glutes. And then as you get better and better at this exercise, you're able to move away from the wall and do this freestanding as so.